The sound of a suitcase being wheeled across marble floors echoes through an empty foyer. Outside, snow falls on expensive cars as a woman in her 60s stands motionless, holding a dish of homemade cranberry relish while her son in law explains why she needs to leave. "We just need our space this year," he says with that practiced smile that never reaches his eyes. Some wounds cut deeper than knives. Some betrayals burn colder than winter. When you've given your life to building a family, what do you do when they decide you're disposable 3 weeks later? The same man calls with urgency in his voice, a dream home opportunity, a prestigious address, a simple request for her signature on a loan. It's amazing how quickly needing space transforms into needing financial help when $3 million is at stake. They say the most dangerous creature is a mother protecting her young. But what about a grandmother who's finally discovered her own power? Some fires, once lit, can never be extinguished. Margaret Winters gripped the edge of the moving box, wincing as a familiar twinge shot through her lower back. At 63, she was no stranger to back pain, but today it felt like a personal betrayal. She had 6 hours of driving ahead of her, from Maine to Connecticut, and her body was already protesting. "You tell me I'm being stubborn," she murmured to the framed photo of James on the mantel. Her husband's eyes crinkled with the hint of a smile, frozen in time 3 years before his heart attack. "But you always did the same thing." 8 months had passed since James's death, but sometimes it felt like both yesterday and a lifetime ago. Their modest ranch-style home in Portland still echoed with his absence, the empty chair at the breakfast table, the untouched toolbox in the garage, the closet she couldn't bring herself to fully clean out. Margaret taped the final box shut and labeled it Thanksgiving supplies in neat block letters. Inside were her grandmother's antique serving dishes, handwritten recipe cards yellowed with age, and the special cranberry orange relish that had been a Winters family tradition for decades. This would be her first Thanksgiving without James, but she'd have Emily, her son-in-law Nathan, and her grandchildren, Grace and Lucas. The thought of those children's faces warmed her as she loaded the last of her luggage into her 10-year-old Subaru. Lucas, 11, with James's thoughtful eyes and insatiable curiosity. Grace, 8, with a creative spirit and dimples that appeared like magic when she laughed. They were the lights of Margaret's life, especially now. The weather forecast had warned of early snow, and gray clouds were already gathering on the horizon as Margaret locked her front door. She hesitated for a moment, looking back at the house where she and James had planned to grow old together. They'd mapped it all out: retirement, travel, being hands-on grandparents. Life rarely follows our carefully laid plans. The first snowflakes began to fall as Margaret pulled onto the interstate. By the time she reached New Hampshire, the weather had deteriorated into a proper November storm. She gripped the steering wheel tightly, leaning forward as if those extra inches might somehow improve visibility through the windshield wiper's frantic arcs. "Should have left yesterday," she muttered to herself, thinking of Emily's invitation to come earlier. But Margaret had been determined to finish her final volunteer shift at Portland General. 35 years as a specialized care nurse wasn't something you walked away from easily, even in retirement. 3 years earlier, "I don't trust him," James said quietly, watching through the window as Nathan helped Emily load their car after the Christmas visit. Margaret handed her husband a mug of coffee. "You don't trust any man with your daughter. This is different." James's brow furrowed. "There's something calculated about him. Did you notice how he steered every conversation back to my investment strategies? How he casually mentioned that client of his who's looking for silent partners? He's in real estate. James, networking is part of his job. There's networking, and then there's prospecting." James turned from the window. "I've spent 40 years managing other people's money. Maggie, I know the difference between genuine interest and someone looking for an angle." Margaret sighed. "Emily loves him." "I know." James's expression softened. "And that's why I'll keep my concerns to myself. But mark my words, that man sees dollar signs when he looks at our family." Um, the memory faded as Margaret navigated a particularly treacherous stretch of highway. James had been right about Nathan, as he was about most financial matters. What had started as occasional loans for business opportunities had evolved into larger investments in Nathan's various real estate ventures, none of which seemed to yield the promised returns. After 5 tense hours of driving, Margaret finally exited the highway. The Turner residence was located in an upscale development in Fairfield County, a colonial-style home with perfect landscaping and a price tag that had raised James's eyebrows when Nathan and Emily purchased it 7 years ago. The down payment had come largely from James and Margaret's retirement savings. a temporary assistance that Nathan had assured them would be repaid once his business took off. As Margaret pulled into the circular driveway, she noticed an unfamiliar van parked near the front door. A middle-aged man in coveralls was loading tools into it, his expression stormy. Nathan stood on the porch, arms crossed tight across his chest, his handsome features arranged in what Margaret had come to recognize as his business face, charming but unyielding. "This is highway robbery," Nathan was saying as Margaret turned off her engine. "We agreed on the estimate. Estimate was for a standard job," the man replied, slamming his toolbox into the van. "Nothing standard about finding that much corrosion. Had to replace twice the piping we expected." "I'm not paying double for your miscalculation," Nathan insisted, his voice maintaining that smooth, controlled quality that never quite reached his eyes. The plumber shook his head. "Look, Mr. Turner, I don't make the rules of physics. Old pipes corrode, water damage spreads. You can pay the invoice, or you can find yourself another plumber when your basement floods again during Christmas." Margaret stepped out of her car, instantly feeling the tension in the air. Nathan noticed her, and his demeanor shifted instantly, a practiced smile replacing the hard set of his jaw. "Margaret, you're here early," he called, too loudly, as if to signal the plumber that their conversation was over. The repairman glanced at Margaret, then back at Nathan. "Invoice is due in 30 days, he said flatly. "Happy Thanksgiving." He climbed into his van and pulled away with a spray of slush. "Plumbing problems?" Margaret asked, retrieving her overnight bag from the passenger seat. Nathan waved dismissively. "Minor leak. Guy tried to upsell us on replacing half the pipes in the house. He approached to take her bag, the perfect son-in-law once more. Let me help you with that. Emily's at the store picking up last-minute items. The children. Grace has a play date. Lucas is at coding club until 5. Nathan carried her bag inside, leaving Margaret to manage the box of Thanksgiving supplies herself. Despite her obvious struggle, the house was immaculate as always, designer furniture arranged just so, seasonal decorations that looked professionally installed. Not a toy or school paper in sight. Margaret had always found it strangely sterile for a home with 2 active children. But Emily insisted this level of organization kept her sane while balancing family and her fledgling interior design business. "I'll put on some coffee," Nathan said, leading her toward the kitchen. "You must be exhausted after that drive." "That would be lovely. Thank you." Margaret set her box on the granite countertop, noting the absence of any Thanksgiving meal preparations. No pies cooling, no vegetables being prepped, none of the organized chaos that usually preceded a family holiday. Nathan busied himself with an elaborate espresso machine, a recent acquisition, judging by his hesitant operation of it. "So, how are things in Portland? Still planning to sell the house in the spring?" "That's the plan," Margaret confirmed, unpacking her serving dishes. "The market's good, and it's too much house for just me now." Nathan nodded approvingly. "Smart move. No sense tying up assets in unnecessary real estate. Have you thought about where you'll relocate?" Before Margaret could answer, the front door opened, and Emily's voice called out, "Hello, Nathan. Can you help with the groceries?" Margaret moved toward the entryway, eager to see her daughter, but Nathan stepped in front of her. "I've got it. Why don't you settle in guest rooms all made up?" Something in his tone gave Margaret pause, but she nodded and carried her overnight bag upstairs. The guest bedroom was indeed prepared, but minimally a made bed, empty nightstand, not even a bottle of water, or the small welcome basket Emily usually assembled for visitors. The ensuite bathroom held fresh towels, but none of the guest toiletries her daughter typically provided. Margaret set down her bag and caught her reflection in the dresser mirror. Her silver gray hair was windblown from the drive, and fatigue had deepened the lines around her eyes. She smoothed her hair, straightened her sweater, and took a deep breath before heading back downstairs. She found Emily in the kitchen, hastily stowing groceries while Nathan hovered nearby, their posture suggesting a conversation interrupted. Emily looked up, her face brightening with what seemed like genuine warmth mixed with something else apprehension. "Mom!" Emily crossed the kitchen to embrace her, smelling of the same vanilla perfume she'd worn since college. "I'm so glad you made it safely." The weather report said the storm was getting worse. "Nothing this old Maine driver couldn't handle," Margaret replied, holding her daughter at arm's length to study her. Emily looked thinner than during her summer visit, with a tightness around her eyes that makeup couldn't quite conceal. "Are you feeling all right? You look tired." Emily glanced briefly at Nathan before answering. "Just busy season at work. A lot of clients want redesigns before the holidays." Nathan cleared his throat. "Speaking of holidays, Margaret, there's something we need to discuss." Emily's smile faltered as she moved to stand beside her husband, her body language submissive in a way that immediately set off warning bells in Margaret's mind. "We've had a slight change of plans for Thanksgiving." Nathan continued, his tone professionally apologetic. Margaret looked between them, noting how Emily couldn't quite meet her eyes. What kind of change? The Brookfields have invited us to their estate for Thanksgiving dinner, Nathan explained. Thomas Brookfield heads the investment group I've been courting for months. This invitation is, well, it's the opportunity we've been waiting for. That's wonderful, Margaret said slowly, trying to understand what this meant for her visit. What time should we arrive? I'll bring my cranberry relish. It's always a hit. A painful silence followed. Emily stared at the floor while Nathan maintained his pleasant expression. It's an intimate gathering, he finally said. Very exclusive. The Brookfields are particular about their guest list. The realization dawned slowly. You're not including me in Thanksgiving. Emily finally spoke, her voice small. Nathan's mother has arranged for us to visit the Brookfield estate. It's a significant business opportunity. I see. Margaret carefully placed the serving dish she'd been holding back in her box. And where will Grace and Lucas be having Thanksgiving if you're networking? The Brookfields have grandchildren their age, Nathan said quickly. It's a family event, just not extended family. I see, Margaret repeated, the words tasting bitter. And Christmas, New Year's. Emily looked up, distress evident in her eyes. Mother Turner has arranged a skiing trip to Vermont for Christmas. It's already paid for, a gift from her. Margaret absorbed this information, feeling as though the floor was shifting beneath her. She'd driven 6 hours through a snowstorm, carrying family heirlooms and holiday traditions, only to be informed she wasn't welcome at the table. And where should I go for the holidays? Emily, she asked, her voice steady despite the hurt churning inside her. Nathan answered before Emily could. I hear the Harborview Hotel does a lovely holiday package. Very elegant. Or perhaps you prefer visiting your sister in Arizona. The weather's much better there this time of year. Margaret's sister had died of breast cancer 4 years ago. Nathan had sent flowers to the funeral, but hadn't attended, citing an unmissable property showing. The fact that he'd forgotten or never bothered to remember this significant detail crystallized everything for Margaret. She gathered her grocery bags without another word and walked to the door. Behind her, she heard Emily's whispered, Mom, wait, but Nathan's firmer. Let her process this. Stopped her daughter from following. As Margaret placed the bags in her car, Lucas and Grace came running up the driveway, backpacks bouncing, their faces lighting up at the sight of their grandmother. Grandma, Lucas called, his lanky arms outstretched for a hug. Are you making your special cheesecake for tomorrow? Margaret knelt to embrace them both, despite the protest from her back. Not this visit, sweetheart. But you always make cheesecake for Thanksgiving, Grace insisted, her small brow furrowed in confusion. Grandma won't be joining us for Thanksgiving this year, Nathan explained, suddenly appearing in the doorway. Grandma has other plans. The disappointment on their faces nearly broke Margaret's heart. She hugged them tighter, promising to see them soon, though she had no idea when that might be. I love you both so much, she whispered, more than all the stars in the sky. Remember, more than all the fish in the sea. They responded in unison, their special goodbye ritual since they were toddlers. As Margaret drove away, she glanced in her rearview mirror. Nathan had his arm around Emily's shoulders, guiding her back inside. Her grandchildren stood in the driveway, still waving, growing smaller with distance until the falling snow swallowed them completely. The Harborview Hotel was the only establishment with vacancies on short notice during Thanksgiving weekend. The holiday package Nathan had so casually recommended was indeed elegant and priced accordingly. Margaret winced at the nightly rate, but handed over her credit card. After 35 years of careful saving and James's life insurance, she had a comfortable nest egg, but not one that accommodated impulse luxury stays. Her room overlooked the harbor, where boats bobbed beneath the steadily falling snow. It was objectively beautiful, but all Margaret could think about was the empty chair at the Brookfields' table that could easily have accommodated her. She ordered room service and ate her solitary Thanksgiving meal while watching the Macy's parade on television. The turkey was dry, the stuffing clearly from a box, the cranberry sauce a pale imitation of her family recipe. She'd barely finished when her phone rang Emily, her voice slightly slurred from wine. Mom, I'm so sorry. It wasn't my idea. Nathan insisted it would be awkward to bring you. A pause, then whispered. The Brookfields were awful, showing off their vacation photos from Bali and bragging about their children's private tutors. Another pause. I wish you'd been here instead. Margaret forgave her. Of course, Emily was her daughter, caught between loyalty to her mother and submission to her husband. But something had fundamentally changed in their relationship, a trust broken, a boundary crossed. The days after Thanksgiving passed in a blur of forced tourism. Margaret visited local museums, took a harbor cruise despite the cold, and wandered through shops selling overpriced holiday decorations. Emily called daily with increasingly transparent excuses for why a visit with the children wouldn't work Nathan's work schedule, Grace's dance recital practice, Lucas's science project. On her fourth night at the hotel, restless and increasingly angry about her situation, Margaret ventured to the hotel bar. It was nearly empty, save for a woman about her age, nursing what looked like a whiskey neat at the far end. Their eyes met briefly, and the woman offered a small nod of recognition, another solitary traveler during the loneliest time of year. After ordering a glass of Cabernet, Margaret found herself drifting toward the stranger. Mind if I join you? Or are you enjoying the solitude? The woman smiled, revealing laugh lines that suggested she did so often. Please, I've had enough solitude to last a lifetime. She extended her hand. Greta Sanderson. Margaret Winters. Displaced for the holidays? Greta asked with surprising directness. Margaret's eyebrows rose. Is it that obvious? Only to a fellow member of the club. Greta raised her glass in a small toast. My son and his husband decided to spend Thanksgiving with his husband's family in Seattle this year. Last minute change of plans. My son-in-law decided I didn't fit the aesthetic of his business networking dinner, Margaret replied, surprising herself with her candor. Greta let out a low whistle. Sounds like a real charmer. He has his moments, Margaret conceded, loyalty to Emily making her add. My daughter loves him. That's usually the complication, isn't it? Greta signaled the bartender for another round. So, what's your plan? Hide out here until Christmas, then get diplomatically uninvited to that, too. The blunt assessment startled a laugh from Margaret. I hadn't thought that far ahead. I'm supposed to check out tomorrow, but I honestly don't know where I'm going. Well, if you're interested in an alternative to expensive hotel isolation, the community center downtown needs volunteers for their holiday meal program. I'm heading there in the morning. Greta shrugged. Beats feeling sorry for yourself in a generic hotel room. Trust me. Been there, done that, got the emotional scars to prove it. Margaret studied the woman, taking in her practical haircut, the simple but quality watch on her wrist, the confident set of her shoulders. There was something grounding about Greta's no-nonsense demeanor. What did you do before retirement? Margaret asked. Social worker, child protective services for 20 years, then senior services for another 15. You specialized care nurse, 35 years at Portland General? Greta nodded approvingly. Thought so. You have the look observant, efficient, probably great in a crisis. And increasingly invisible as I age, Margaret added wryly. One of society's more charming features. Greta agreed with a sardonic smile. So, community center tomorrow. They could use someone with medical training, and I could use the company of someone who isn't either asking me for something or treating me like I'm senile. Margaret found herself agreeing before she'd fully considered it. Perhaps it was the wine, or the loneliness, or simply the straightforward way Greta cut through pretense. Whatever the reason, when she returned to her room later that evening, she felt lighter than she had in days. The community center was housed in a converted warehouse on the outskirts of the historical district. Inside, a hive of activity surrounded long tables being prepared for what Greta explained was a weekly meal program that expanded significantly during the holidays. Most volunteers show up for Thanksgiving and Christmas Day, Greta explained as she introduced Margaret to the coordinator, a harried-looking woman in her 40s. But the need doesn't magically disappear on the other days. Margaret was assigned to the health check station, a small area where attendees could have basic vitals taken, receive over-the-counter medications for minor ailments, and be referred to clinics for more serious concerns. It was familiar work that engaged her mind and hands, a welcome distraction from her own troubles. By the end of the day, she'd treated a diabetic homeless man whose feet needed urgent attention, helped a young mother manage her toddler's fever, and listened to an elderly veteran describe symptoms that warranted an immediate call to the free clinic. The coordinator practically begged her to return the next day. We haven't had anyone with real medical training in months, she explained. Most of our regulars are social work students or retired teachers. Margaret glanced at Greta, who was helping clear tables with brisk efficiency. I think I might stay in town a bit longer, she said slowly. If you can use the help. That evening, she extended her hotel stay for another week and called Emily to explain she wouldn't be returning to Portland immediately. You're staying in Connecticut, Emily sounded surprised. Because of what happened, Mom, I'm so sorry about Thanksgiving. I should have stood up to Nathan. This isn't about Nathan, Margaret interrupted, though it wasn't entirely true. I've connected with a community service program that needs medical volunteers. It feels good to be useful. But what about your house? Your things in Portland? The house is fine. Mrs. Abernathy next door is checking on it. And I'm not due back at the hospital volunteer program until after New Year's. Margaret hesitated, then added, I'd like to see the children, Emily, even if it's just for an hour at a park or coffee shop. The silence that followed spoke volumes. Nathan's been working such long hours, Emily finally said. The Brookfield connection is really promising, and he's been networking constantly. The children's schedules are so packed with holiday activities. I understand, Margaret said, though she didn't. Perhaps after the holiday rush. That night, alone in her hotel room, Margaret allowed herself to truly cry for the first time since James's death, not the quiet tears of grief she'd shed at his funeral, but raw, angry sobs that came from the deepest part of her. She cried for the holiday traditions abandoned, for grandchildren being taught that their grandmother was optional, for her daughter slowly morphing into someone she barely recognized, and she cried for James, who would have never allowed this to happen, who would have stood firm against Nathan's manipulations, who would have protected their family's heart over social appearances. As midnight approached, she wiped her tears and made a decision. This would be the last holiday she spent alone. The last time she accepted being an afterthought in her own family's life. Something needed to change. What she didn't realize was how soon that change would come, or that it would arrive in the form of an urgent phone call from Nathan himself just 3 weeks later. The Christmas season at the community center brought both increased need and increased support. Margaret settled into a routine, working the health station 3 days a week and helping with meal preparation on two others. She moved from the expensive Harborview to a modest extended stay hotel on the outskirts of town, stretching her budget further. Greta became a friend and guide to the area, introducing Margaret to affordable restaurants, a knitting circle that met at the local library, and a walking group for seniors that convened in the mall during inclement weather. You're building a life here, Greta observed one evening as they shared Chinese takeout in Margaret's small hotel kitchenette. Temporary accommodations notwithstanding, Margaret looked around at the impersonal space she'd attempted to make homey with a small poinsettia and family photos. I suppose I am. It wasn't the plan, but plans seem to be rather flexible these days. Have you heard from your daughter grandkids? Margaret's expression tightened. Emily calls every few days, always when Nathan's not around, always apologetic about why I can't see the children. She pushed a piece of broccoli around her plate. Christmas plans are still being finalized, Greta snorted. Translation, the son-in-law is still deciding whether you're useful to him or not. That's harsh, Greta. Doesn't make it less true. Greta set down her chopsticks. Look, I spent 35 years watching family dynamics professionally. Your son-in-law is isolating your daughter and children from support systems that don't align with his goals. Classic control behavior. Margaret wanted to defend Emily, to explain that Nathan had his good qualities, that their marriage wasn't as one-sided as it appeared, but the evidence was becoming harder to ignore. I can't force my way into their lives, she said finally. No, Greta agreed, but you can position yourself to be available when the cracks start showing, and trust me, with men like your son-in-law, cracks always appear. 2 days before Christmas, the crack appeared in the form of an unexpected text from Emily Can Lucas and Grace stay with you tomorrow afternoon, 2 to 5 p.m. Nathan has a business meeting, and our regular sitter canceled. I'd come too, but I need to finish shopping. Margaret stared at her phone in disbelief. After weeks of excuses and deflections, this sudden request felt like a trap. But the thought of seeing her grandchildren overrode her suspicion. Of course. Where should I meet you? Emily's response was immediate hotel lobby. Nathan doesn't need to know. Things have been tense. The subtext was clear. This visit needed to remain a secret from Nathan, a realization that sent a chill through Margaret despite her excitement. The next day, she waited nervously in the hotel lobby, having spent the morning child-proofing her room and purchasing small gifts and snacks. When Emily arrived with the children, the transformation in her daughter's appearance was shocking. The weight loss Margaret had noticed at Thanksgiving had progressed, leaving Emily's face gaunt beneath carefully applied makeup. Dark circles shadowed her eyes, and she moved with a nervous energy that suggested either too much caffeine or too little sleep. Lucas and Grace, however, burst through the hotel doors with unbridled enthusiasm, launching themselves at their grandmother with such force that she nearly lost her balance. "Grandma, we missed you so much," Grace exclaimed, her arms wrapped tightly around Margaret's waist. Lucas, trying to maintain the dignity of his 11 years, settled for a side hug but couldn't suppress his grin. "Did you really help a homeless guy not lose his foot? Mom said you're working at a shelter." Community center, Margaret corrected, looking questioningly at Emily, who shrugged. They wanted to know what you were doing instead of coming home for Christmas. Emily explained, her voice low. I thought the truth was better than whatever Nathan might tell them. After promises to return promptly at 5, Emily left, and Margaret spent a glorious 3 hours reconnecting with her grandchildren. They made paper snowflakes to decorate her room, played board games she purchased at the local pharmacy, and shared hot chocolate with the tiny kitchenette's microwave. In quiet moments, Margaret gently probed for information about home life. Grace mentioned that Daddy gets mad at the computer a lot lately, while Lucas revealed that Mom cries in the bathroom sometimes when she thinks we can't hear. When Emily returned, precisely at 5 as promised, she seemed reluctant to leave. She fussed over the children's coats, commented on the snowflakes, asked detailed questions about their afternoon all reasons to extend their visit by precious minutes. Finally, she checked her watch and sighed. We need to go. Nathan will be home by 6. Emily, Margaret said softly, placing a hand on her daughter's arm. Is everything all right? At home. Emily's smile was brittle. Just holiday stress. Nathan's big deal with the Brookfields is taking longer than expected. He's tense. If you need anything. I know, Mom. Emily squeezed her hand. Thanks for today. It meant a lot to them. To me, too. After they left, Margaret sat in her quiet room, surrounded by paper snowflakes and the lingering scent of hot chocolate, trying to reconcile the joy of reconnection with the growing concern for her daughter's well-being. Christmas Day dawned clear and cold. Margaret had volunteered for the early shift at the community center, helping prepare breakfast for those with nowhere else to go. The work kept her hands busy while her mind drifted to Portland, to holidays past when James was alive and Emily was young, to the Christmas rituals they'd created together, matching pajamas, cinnamon rolls, James reading The Night Before Christmas in his deep, theatrical voice. Her phone remained silent. No call from Emily, no texts, not even the perfunctory holiday greeting she might have expected from Nathan for appearance's sake. The silence felt pointed, another reminder of her precarious position in her own family. That evening, back in her hotel room, with a microwave dinner for one, her phone finally rang. Unknown number, Connecticut area code. Hello, Mrs. Winters. The voice was male, unfamiliar. This is Dr. Harrison from Fairfield Memorial Hospital. Your daughter Emily Turner has been admitted, and you're listed as her emergency contact. Margaret's heart seemed to stop. What happened? Is she all right? She's stable, the doctor assured her. But she's asking for you. I can't share more details over the phone due to privacy regulations. I'll be there in 20 minutes. Margaret's hands shook as she gathered her purse and keys. The drive to the hospital passed in a blur of worst-case scenarios. Had there been an accident? Were the children involved? Was it Nathan at the emergency department? She was directed to a curtained bay where Emily lay on a gurney, an IV in her arm, her face pale beneath the harsh fluorescent lighting. When she saw Margaret, she burst into tears. Mom, I'm so sorry. I didn't know who else to call. Margaret rushed to her side, taking in the situation with a nurse's practiced eye. IV fluids, cardiac monitor, no obvious injuries. What happened, sweetheart? Emily wiped at her tears. They're saying exhaustion and dehydration. I fainted at home, hit my head on the counter. Margaret noticed the small bandage at Emily's temple for the first time. Where are the children? Where's Nathan? Children are at Mother Turner's for the night. Christmas sleepover. Emily's voice was bitter. Nathan brought me to the ER, but there was an urgent call from the Brookfields. He couldn't miss it, Christmas evening or not. The pieces began to align in Margaret's mind, Emily's weight loss, the exhaustion evident in her face for weeks, the whispered calls and secret afternoon visit, the signs of a woman under tremendous stress. Emily, she said gently, talk to me. What's really going on? Her daughter's composure crumbled. In halting sentences, she described mounting pressure from Nathan to maintain appearances beyond their means. The Brookfield connection, initially promising, had stalled, but Nathan had already leveraged their finances based on anticipated commissions. Credit card debt was mounting. The children's private school tuition was coming due. He keeps saying we just need to hold on a little longer, Emily whispered, that his big break is coming, but he's been saying that for years. Mom, and now? She gestured weakly at the hospital room. Now your body is telling you something your mind hasn't been ready to hear. Margaret finished for her. Emily nodded, fresh tears spilling. What am I going to do? Before Margaret could answer, the curtain was pushed aside as Nathan strode in, his expression a careful mix of concern and irritation. He faltered momentarily at the sight of Margaret. Margaret, I didn't realize you were in town. His tone suggested this was an unpleasant surprise. Emily called me, she replied evenly, not moving from her daughter's side. I'm sure that wasn't necessary. Nathan turned his attention to Emily. The doctor says it's just exhaustion, nothing a good night's rest won't fix. And dehydration, Margaret added. And a mild concussion from the fall. Nathan's smile tightened. Yes, well, these things happen during busy seasons. Emily's been pushing herself too hard with her little design projects. My work is what's keeping our credit cards from maxing out completely, Emily said quietly, a hint of defiance in her voice that Margaret hadn't heard in years. Nathan's expression darkened briefly before he masked it with concern. You're tired and not thinking clearly. We can discuss our private financial matters at home. He emphasized private with a pointed look at Margaret. I think Emily needs rest now, Margaret interjected, using the professional tone she perfected during decades of managing difficult family members in the hospital. The doctor mentioned keeping her overnight for observation. That's ridiculous, Nathan scoffed. It's Christmas night. She needs to be home, in her own bed. What she needs, Margaret said firmly, is proper medical care and reduced stress. I'm happy to stay with her tonight. A tense silence followed as Nathan assessed the situation. Margaret could almost see the calculations behind his eyes, how to maintain control without appearing unreasonable. Fine, he finally conceded. If that's what the doctor recommends, I'll return in the morning to take her home. He leaned down to kiss Emily's forehead, whispering something in her ear that made her tense visibly. After he left, Emily exhaled shakily. He's furious. Let him be, Margaret replied, arranging the thin hospital blanket more comfortably around her daughter. Sometimes anger is the price of setting boundaries. Emily looked at her mother with something like wonder. When did you get so wise about boundaries? Mom, Margaret smiled sadly. When I realized how painful it is to have them violated. She squeezed Emily's hand. Rest now. We'll figure things out tomorrow. As Emily drifted into sleep, Margaret kept vigil in the uncomfortable visitor's chair, her mind racing. The financial strain, Nathan's controlling behavior, Emily's physical collapse, these weren't isolated issues, but symptoms of a deeper problem. James had seen it years ago, had tried to warn her about Nathan's character. Now Margaret faced a critical decision. How far should she intervene in her daughter's marriage? What would actually help versus what might push Emily further under Nathan's influence? And most importantly, what resources did Margaret herself have to offer as an alternative to Emily's current situation? She needed advice from someone who understood both the financial and emotional complexities at play. Someone James had trusted implicitly with their family's welfare. It was time to call Samuel Hayes, James's longtime business partner and the executor of his estate. If anyone knew whether James had left any provisions that might help Emily in this situation, it would be Samuel. As the hospital's muted nighttime activities continued around them, Margaret formulated her plan. Tomorrow would bring confrontation with Nathan, hard conversations with Emily, and potentially life-altering decisions for all of them. For the first time since James's death, Margaret felt a sense of clarity and purpose. Her family needed her not for holiday decorations or traditional recipes, but for the strength and discernment that only she could provide. Nathan Turner had underestimated her once by dismissing her from the holiday table. She would ensure he didn't make that mistake again. 3 days after Christmas, Margaret sat in Samuel Hayes's downtown office, surrounded by the understated elegance that had characterized his financial practice for 4 decades. At 70, Samuel had officially retired but maintained a small office for legacy clients, those like James, whose relationships extended beyond professional into personal territory. Margaret, Samuel greeted her warmly, rising from behind his desk. It's been too long. How are you holding up managing? She replied, accepting his brief hug before taking a seat, though not quite in the way James and I had planned. Samuel's expression sobered as Margaret outlined the situation with Emily and Nathan. He listened without interruption, occasionally making notes, his experienced eyes narrowing at certain financial details. The pattern is concerning, he acknowledged when she finished, particularly the escalating debt combined with promises of imminent success, classic signs of financial overextension. Emily's physically breaking down from the stress, Margaret added, and I'm worried about the children. Lucas mentioned Nathan's increasing anger, and Grace seems anxious in ways no 8-year-old should be. Samuel nodded thoughtfully. And you're wondering if James made any provisions that might help Emily extricate herself from this situation? Yes, I know we set up education trusts for the grandchildren, but those don't help with Emily's immediate needs. Samuel studied her for a moment, then rose and crossed to a wall safe concealed behind an innocuous landscape painting. James left specific instructions about when to share certain information with you, he said as he entered the combination. He said I'd know when the time was right. He retrieved a sealed envelope and a small USB drive, placing both on the desk between them. I believe this qualifies as the right time. Margaret stared at the items, recognizing James's handwriting on the envelope. What is this? After his heart diagnosis, James became concerned about your long-term security, Samuel explained, particularly in relation to Nathan's influence over family finances. Margaret felt a chill. He never shared those concerns with me. He didn't want to burden you or create conflict with Emily. Samuel pushed the envelope toward her, but he took precautions. With slightly trembling fingers, Margaret opened the envelope. Inside was a letter in James's familiar handwriting and several legal documents. As she read, her eyes widened. A separate trust in my name only? She looked up at Samuel in disbelief. For $1.8 million. How is this possible? Why didn't I know about this? James was an exceptional investor. Samuel said simply, and he was concerned about Nathan's pattern of financial requests. He structured this trust to mature 9 months after his death, specifically to provide you with resources independent of Emily and Nathan's influence. Margaret struggled to process this information, but our will was straightforward, everything to each other, then to Emily upon both our deaths. This wasn't part of the will, Samuel explained. This was established separately, using investment returns that exceeded your planned retirement needs, money that never entered your joint estate. Nathan can't touch it. No, it's structured to provide you with income and security for life, then passed directly to the grandchildren's education trusts upon your death. Emily is specifically excluded as trustee, ensuring Nathan cannot access it through her. Margaret sat back, overwhelmed. James anticipated all of this. He feared it, Samuel corrected gently. He hoped to be wrong. He gestured to the USB drive. This contains a video message James recorded for you. He asked that I give it to you only if Nathan's behavior matched the pattern James was concerned about. Margaret picked up the small device, feeling its weight as a physical manifestation of her husband's foresight and love. I'm not sure I'm ready to watch this. You don't have to decide now, Samuel assured her. Take it with you, but there's something else you should know. His expression became more serious. While reviewing some old files, I came across something concerning about Nathan Turner. He pulled a folder from his desk drawer. 7 years ago, shortly after Nathan and Emily were married, there was an insurance investigation into a property Nathan was selling. Allegations of fraudulent claims for water damage that had been cosmetically concealed rather than properly repaired. Margaret frowned. Was he charged with anything? No, the case was quietly settled. Samuel's expression was grim. I found it interesting that the lead investigator was suddenly reassigned and the case closed with minimal documentation, almost as if someone with influence intervened. Victoria Turner, Margaret murmured, thinking of Nathan's formidable mother. She has connections everywhere in Fairfield County. Indeed. Samuel closed the folder. I share this not to alarm you, but to confirm James's concerns weren't unfounded. Nathan has demonstrated a pattern of financial opportunism and ethical flexibility that dates back years. Margaret thought of the plumber arguing with Nathan on her arrival, of Emily's exhaustion, of the children's comments about their father's anger. Pieces of a troubling puzzle were coming together. What should I do? Samuel, the financial advisor, leaned forward. First, secure your own position. I recommend using a portion of the trust to purchase a small property near Emily. Nothing extravagant, but a stable base of operations. I was considering returning to Portland, Margaret admitted. You could, Samuel acknowledged, but distance makes it harder to provide meaningful support if when Emily needs it. And the grandchildren need a safe harbor close by. He was right, Margaret realized. Running back to Maine might protect her from further hurt, but it would abandon Emily and the children to Nathan's escalating financial desperation. Second, Samuel continued, consult with a family law attorney about grandparents' rights in Connecticut, not because you need to pursue them now, but to understand your options if Nathan attempts to restrict access to the children. The thought that legal intervention might be necessary to see her own grandchildren was heartbreaking, but Margaret nodded. Preparation was prudent. And third, Samuel concluded, be patient. People like Nathan self-destruct eventually. When that happens, Emily will need you solid and ready, not depleted from fighting battles you can't win. As Margaret left Samuel's office, the USB drive secure in her purse and the trust document safely copied and filed, she felt simultaneously burdened by new knowledge and lightened by new possibilities. James had provided for her in ways she hadn't imagined. his love extending beyond death to protect her from precisely the situation she now faced. The question remained how best to use these resources to help Emily without creating greater conflict. Nathan would view any financial assistance as interference, any boundary as a challenge to his authority. The balance would be delicate, requiring strategy rather than just emotional response. Margaret's phone chimed with a text as she reached her car. Nathan's name appeared on the screen, sending an immediate spike of anxiety through her. Need to discuss important business opportunity. Meet tomorrow, 10 a.m., our house. Concerns family financial planning. The timing was too perfect to be coincidental. Somehow, Nathan had learned about her meeting with Samuel, or at least suspected something had changed in her financial situation. His predatory instincts were clearly triggered. Margaret typed her response carefully. I have volunteer commitments until noon. Available after 2 p.m., a small assertion of independence, a signal that she wouldn't jump at his command. Nathan's reply was almost immediate. 2 p.m. works. Emily looking forward to seeing you. Margaret doubted Emily even knew about the meeting. This was Nathan's initiative. His attempt to reassert control after the hospital incident disrupted his narrative. As she drove back to her hotel, Margaret realized she was at a crossroads. The path back to Portland represented safety, but potential regret. The path forward in Connecticut promised conflict, but also the possibility of genuine help for Emily and the grandchildren. James had equipped her for this moment, both financially and through the wisdom of his concerns. Now it was up to Margaret to honor that preparation with courage and discernment. Tomorrow's meeting with Nathan would be the opening move in a game with stakes far higher than holiday invitations or family traditions. At 63, Margaret Winters was preparing for the fight of her life, not for her own security, which James had ensured, but for the well-being of her daughter and grandchildren. Nathan Turner had dismissed her as an inconvenient old woman, disposable and powerless. He was about to discover just how profoundly he had misjudged her. Margaret arrived at the Turner residence precisely at 2 o'clock, parking her Subaru beside Nathan's gleaming BMW. The house looked particularly imposing today, its colonial symmetry and manicured landscaping a physical manifestation of the appearance-focused life Nathan had constructed. She'd spent the morning preparing for this meeting, consulting briefly with a family law attorney Greta had recommended, and reviewing the trust documents Samuel had provided. She'd also finally watched James's video message, drawing strength from her late husband's calm, insightful words. Trust your instincts, Maggie, James had said, his face gaunt but his eyes clear and determined. You've always been the compass of our family. Nathan will try to make you doubt yourself, to make you feel your age as a weakness. But remember, experience isn't a liability. It's your greatest asset. You've seen his kind before, in patients' families, in hospital politics. The packaging is different, but the patterns are the same. With James's voice still resonating in her mind, Margaret approached the front door with a confidence she hadn't felt in months. Before she could ring the bell, Emily opened the door, her smile tight and her eyes darting nervously behind her. Mom, thank you for coming, she said, embracing Margaret briefly. Nathan's in the study. He's been on calls all morning. The house was unnaturally quiet. Where are the children? Margaret asked as Emily led her inside. Mother Turner took them for the afternoon. Shopping, then dinner. Emily's tone was carefully neutral, but Margaret caught the underlying tension. Are you feeling better after the hospital? Emily nodded quickly. Much better. Just needed rest, like Nathan said. The robotic quality of her response sent warning signals through Margaret's mind. Emily sounded rehearsed, as if reciting lines rather than speaking her own thoughts. Nathan's study was at the rear of the house, a wood-paneled room designed to project masculine success, with its leather furniture and strategically placed business awards. Nathan rose from behind an imposing desk as they entered, his smile professionally warm. Margaret, thank you for making time. You're looking well. As are you, Nathan. She accepted the chair he indicated, noting how it was positioned slightly lower than his own, a subtle power play she recognized from her years dealing with hospital administrators. Coffee, tea, Emily offered, hovering by the door. Nothing for me, thank you, Margaret replied, maintaining eye contact with Nathan. This was between them, and they both knew it. Nathan nodded to Emily. We're fine, darling. Why don't you finish those design boards for the Hendersons while Margaret and I chat? It wasn't a suggestion. Emily hesitated briefly, then retreated, closing the door behind her with a soft click. I understand you met with Samuel Hayes yesterday, Nathan began without preamble, leaning back in his chair with calculated casualness. Margaret kept her expression neutral, though internally she wondered about his information source. Samuel is an old friend and James's financial advisor. It's natural I would consult him during this transition period. Nathan's smile tightened. Of course. Though I was surprised to learn you're considering purchasing property in Connecticut. Emily mentioned you were planning to return to Portland. So that was how he knew he'd been monitoring Emily's conversations, probably checking her phone. The violation of privacy was troubling but not surprising. Plans evolve, Margaret replied simply. After spending time here, I've realized how much I value being close to Emily and the grandchildren. Admirable, Nathan said, though his tone suggested otherwise. Family connection is important, which brings me to the purpose of our meeting. He opened a folder on his desk, revealing glossy photographs of a sprawling lakefront property with manicured grounds and a stately facade. The Lakewood Estate, 8 bedrooms, private dock, guest house with separate entrance, one of the most prestigious addresses in Fairfield County. Margaret studied the photos without comment, waiting for the pitch she knew was coming. It's being offered privately before market listing, Nathan continued. The owners are relocating to Europe. They're motivated sellers, willing to consider offers in the low 3 millions. It's lovely, Margaret acknowledged, though rather large for your family of 4. Nathan leaned forward, enthusiasm overtaking his practiced restraint. That's the beauty of it. There's room for expansion, both family and business. The property includes zoning for a home office where I could host clients. The guest house would be perfect for you. And there it was the true purpose of this meeting. Nathan wasn't just sharing a real estate opportunity. He was fishing for financial contribution. I see, Margaret said carefully. And you're considering making an offer? We're beyond considering, Nathan replied confidently. We've been pre-approved for financing, contingent on a substantial down payment and co-signer with additional assets. The same request as before, repackaged with the additional enticement of the guest house, a place for Margaret within their lives, but only if she provided financial backing for Nathan's ambitions. That's quite a commitment, she observed, especially given your current mortgage and Emily's recent health concerns. Nathan waved dismissively. The Brookfield partnership is finalizing next week. The commission structure is extremely favorable. You seem very certain of that outcome. A flicker of irritation crossed his face. I've cultivated this relationship for months. The contracts are being drawn up as we speak. Margaret nodded thoughtfully. And if the partnership doesn't materialize as expected, real estate can be unpredictable, as James often reminded me. With all due respect to James, Nathan said with barely concealed impatience, he was overly cautious. Sometimes opportunity requires bold action. Bold action backed by sound fundamentals, Margaret countered, a principle that served James well throughout his career. Nathan's professional veneer cracked slightly. Margaret, let's be direct. Samuel Hayes has obviously informed you about certain assets James left outside the standard estate process. Assets that could be leveraged for family advancement, including securing this property? Margaret maintained her composure despite her internal alarm. How much did Nathan know about the trust? Had Samuel betrayed her confidence? James structured our affairs to provide for my security in widowhood, she said carefully. A thoughtful husband's final act of protection. No one is suggesting compromising your security, Nathan assured her, his tone softening to something almost paternal. Merely deploying resources for maximum family benefit, the guest house would provide you with permanent accommodation, while the property itself would appreciate significantly over time. Margaret studied him, noting the calculated sincerity in his expression, the practiced way he leaned forward to convey earnestness. How many clients had fallen for this same performance? It's an interesting proposition, she said finally. Though I'm curious, why not ask Victoria for assistance? The Turners have substantial family resources. I understand. Nathan's smile froze momentarily. Mother's assets are tied up in long-term investments, not easily liquidated on short notice. I see. Margaret paused deliberately. And what exactly are you proposing as my contribution to this venture? A co-signature on the mortgage, and perhaps assistance with the down payment. Nathan replied smoothly. Say, $500,000. The guest house would be renovated to your specifications, of course. $500,000 plus a significant liability, as co-signer a staggering request presented as if it were perfectly reasonable. Margaret wondered how long he'd been planning this approach, how carefully he'd calculated the timing after her meeting with Samuel. That's quite substantial, she observed. What happens if I decline? Nathan's expression remained pleasant, but his eyes hardened. We'd pursue other options, naturally, though it would be unfortunate to miss this particular opportunity, especially when it offers such a perfect solution for the entire family. The implied threat was clear. Her inclusion in family life remained contingent on financial cooperation. I'll need time to consider, Margaret said, rising from her chair to signal the conversation's end. Real estate decisions shouldn't be rushed, as I'm sure you advise your clients. Nathan stood as well, his height allowing him to look down at her another subtle power play. Of course. Though the sellers are entertaining multiple offers, I'd hate to lose this because of hesitation. A day or two won't make the difference on a property of this caliber, Margaret replied, moving toward the door. I'd like to discuss this with Emily as well, hear her thoughts directly. Emily supports this completely, Nathan said quickly. She's excited about the possibilities. Nevertheless, I'd like to speak with her. Before Nathan could object further, Margaret opened the study door and stepped into the hallway, where she nearly collided with Emily. Her daughter's proximity suggested she'd been listening at the door, her anxious expression confirming she'd heard at least part of the conversation. Mom, she said, too brightly. All finished. I thought we might have tea before you go. Nathan appeared behind Margaret, his hand coming to rest possessively on Emily's shoulder. Margaret needs time to consider our proposal. I'm sure she has questions for you about the property. Actually, Margaret said, I'd love that tea. Emily, perhaps in the sunroom. The garden looks lovely from there. It was a deliberate move to separate Emily from Nathan's immediate influence, and everyone present recognized it. Nathan's grip on Emily's shoulder tightened briefly before he released her with a practiced smile. I have calls to return anyway, he said smoothly. Take your time, ladies. The sunroom was at the opposite end of the house from Nathan's study, a bright space with comfortable wicker furniture and views of the winter garden. Emily moved with nervous energy, preparing tea with methodical precision that spoke of practiced distraction. Nathan seems very enthusiastic about this property, Margaret observed once they were seated with steaming cups. Emily's hands trembled slightly as she added sugar to her tea. It's an amazing opportunity. The location, the prestige. The children would have so much space. The words sounded rehearsed, echoing Nathan's sales pitch. Margaret tried a different approach. How are you really feeling, Emily? Not just physically, but about everything, the move, the finances, the pressure. Emily glanced toward the doorway as if expecting Nathan to appear. When she spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. It's complicated, Mom. Nathan's under tremendous stress with the Brookfield deal. When it comes through, things will improve. And if it doesn't come through, Emily's eyes filled with tears. It has to. We've already. She stopped abruptly, setting down her cup with a clatter. It's going to work out. Nathan always makes things work out. Margaret reached across the table to take her daughter's hand. Emily, I need to ask you something important. Are you afraid of Nathan? What? No, of course not. The denial came too quickly, too forcefully. He has a temper sometimes, especially when business is stressful, but he would never hurt me. Not all harm is physical, Margaret said gently. Control, isolation, financial manipulation. These are forms of abuse, too. Emily withdrew her hand, her expression shuddering. Nathan isn't abusive. He's ambitious, driven. Sometimes that comes across as controlling, but he wants what's best for us. And this new property, is that what's best for you, or what's best for Nathan's image? Emily's response was interrupted by the sound of the front door opening, followed by children's voices echoing through the foyer. Lucas and Grace were home early, their excited chatter about new purchases mixing with Victoria Turner's more measured tones. Grandma, Grace's delighted shriek preceded her entrance to the sunroom, where she launched herself at Margaret with unrestrained enthusiasm. Lucas followed more sedately, though his grin betrayed equal pleasure at her presence. We didn't know you were visiting, he said, dumping his shopping bag on a nearby chair. Are you staying for dinner? We're having spaghetti. I'm helping cook. Before Margaret could respond, Victoria Turner appeared in the doorway, her elegant figure a study in restrained disapproval. At 68, she maintained the polished appearance and erect posture of her debutante days, her silver hair styled impeccably, her clothing suggesting casual luxury. Margaret, she acknowledged coolly. What an unexpected surprise. Grandma Victoria said we could call her Nana instead, Grace volunteered, still clinging to Margaret's side. But I said we already have a grandma. Victoria's smile tightened. There's room for different terms of endearment in children's lives. Grace, now, why don't you and Lucas take your purchases upstairs? I'm sure your mother and grandmother have things to discuss. It was a dismissal, and everyone recognized it. The children reluctantly gathered their bags, each hugging Margaret quickly before departing. Their whispered, "Will you really stay for dinner?" making her heart ache with their transparent need for her presence. Once they were gone, Victoria entered the sunroom fully, claiming the chair opposite Margaret with the confidence of someone accustomed to territorial dominance. I'm surprised to see you here, Margaret, she said, declining Emily's half-hearted offer of tea. Nathan mentioned you were returning to Portland after the holidays. Plans change, Margaret replied evenly, especially when family needs arise. Victoria's gaze flicked to Emily, who seemed to shrink under her mother-in-law's scrutiny. Yes, I heard about the little hospital incident. Exhaustion. Was it so dramatic? The dismissive tone made Margaret's protective instincts flare. Dehydration and concussion aren't dramatic, Victoria. They're serious medical conditions that required intervention. Mother Turner has been very helpful, Emily interjected, her peacemaking instincts clearly triggered by the tension between the older women. She took the children for the night so I could rest. Of course I did, Victoria said smoothly. Family supports family in times of need. Her emphasis on family felt pointed, a reminder of Margaret's outsider status in the Turner hierarchy. Speaking of family support, Margaret said, deciding directness was the only viable approach. Nathan has just proposed I co-sign for a rather substantial property investment. Victoria's perfectly composed expression flickered with surprise, then calculation. The Lakewood estate? Yes, it's a significant opportunity. The right address makes all the difference in establishing proper connections. So, I've heard, Margaret replied, though I'm curious why the Turner family isn't providing this support. Given your established position in the community, the challenge was direct, perhaps too direct, but Margaret was tired of the veiled hostility and manipulative dynamics surrounding her daughter's marriage. Victoria's smile was arctic. Our family resources are diversified across multiple ventures. Nathan understands the importance of demonstrating independent financial capability at this stage of his career. By leveraging his mother-in-law's assets, Mom, Emily protested weakly, her distress evident. Please, Victoria waved a manicured hand dismissively. It's a fair question, Emily, and the answer is simple. Family resources should be deployed where they create maximum benefit. If Margaret has liquid assets that can be utilized for family advancement, why wouldn't she contribute? The commodification of family relationships was so blatant that Margaret almost admired Victoria's brazenness. The Turner matriarch saw nothing wrong with this transactional approach to family support. Because financial entanglement creates unhealthy dependencies, Margaret replied calmly. Something James and I learned through decades of financial advising. Victoria's eyebrows rose fractionally. How interesting that you mentioned James. Nathan tells me there are questions about certain assets that may have been, shall we say, strategically positioned prior to James's passing. The implication was clear. Victoria knew something about the trust, or at least suspected its existence. Margaret maintained her composure, though internally she wondered again about the source of this information. James was meticulous about our financial planning, she said simply. Everything was properly documented and legally executed. I'm sure it was, Victoria replied, though sometimes legal technicalities can obscure ethical responsibilities, especially regarding family provision. The conversation was interrupted by Nathan's arrival, his expression shifting from surprise to careful neutrality at the sight of his mother. Mother, I didn't realize you'd returned with the children already. The shopping expedition was cut short, Victoria explained. Grace developed a headache, though she seems remarkably recovered now that her other grandmother has appeared. The petty jealousy was so transparent that Margaret almost felt sorry for the woman. Almost. I was just leaving, Margaret said, rising from her chair. Emily, thank you for the tea. I'll call you tomorrow about my decision regarding Nathan's proposal. Nathan moved to intercept her before she reached the doorway. No need to rush, Margaret. You haven't seen the children in weeks. Stay for dinner, as Lucas suggested. The sudden hospitality was calculated, clearly intended to prevent any private conversation between Margaret and Victoria that might undermine his financial agenda. Another time, Margaret replied firmly. I have evening commitments at the community center. It was a lie, but a necessary one. She needed space to process this encounter, to consider her options without the emotional manipulation of the Turner household dynamics. Emily walked her to the door, her movements tense under Nathan's watchful gaze from the hallway. As they reached the foyer, the children thundered down the stairs, protesting Margaret's departure with predictable vehemence. But you just got here, Grace wailed, clinging to Margaret's coat. You haven't seen my new ballet shoes or Lucas's science project or anything. Another day very soon, Margaret promised, kneeling despite her protesting back to embrace them both. I'll call your mom tomorrow to arrange something special, just the four of us. Lucas's eyes narrowed with a perception that sometimes made him seem older than his years. Dad won't like that, he said quietly, his voice pitched for Margaret's ears alone. He says you're interfering. The candid assessment sent a chill through Margaret. What else had Nathan been saying about her in front of the children? Adults sometimes disagree, she said carefully. But that doesn't change how much I love you. Their goodbye ritual, more than all the stars in the sky, more than all the fish in the sea, was conducted under Nathan's increasingly impatient supervision. As Margaret finally drove away, she glanced in her rearview mirror to see him ushering the children inside with firm hands on their shoulders, Emily following behind like a shadow. The encounter had confirmed Margaret's worst fears about the dynamics in her daughter's home. Nathan's financial desperation was escalating. Victoria's influence was pervasive, and Emily was caught in a web of manipulation that extended to the children. The Lakewood estate proposal wasn't just about a property investment, it was about binding Margaret's financial resources to Nathan's control. She needed a clear strategy that would protect her own security while creating an escape route for Emily and the children when they were ready to take it. It would require careful planning, legal preparation, and most of all, patience. As she drove back to her hotel, Margaret mentally adjusted her plans. Returning to Portland was no longer an option, not while Emily and the children were in this situation. She would need a permanent base in Connecticut, somewhere close enough to provide support, but independent enough to avoid Nathan's direct influence. First, she would find a small condominium to purchase outright using the trust funds. Something modest, but comfortable, with room for the children to visit and potentially for Emily if circumstances required emergency accommodation. Second, she would document everything, every interaction with Nathan, every concerning comment from the children, every indication of financial mismanagement or controlling behavior. If legal intervention became necessary, evidence would be crucial. Third, she would build a support network beyond the Turner family's reach. Greta had already become a valuable ally, and the connections Margaret was forming through the community center provided both purpose and potential resources. By the time she reached her hotel, Margaret had formed her answer to Nathan's proposal. She would decline firmly, but without burning bridges that might later provide access to the children. She would offer limited financial assistance for the grandchildren's immediate needs, school supplies, medical expenses, extracurricular activities, while making it clear that co-signing loans or providing down payments was not an option. Nathan would be angry. Victoria would be contemptuous. Emily would be caught in the middle, but for the first time since James's death, Margaret felt she was standing on solid ground, guided by both pragmatic considerations and the ethical compass her husband had always trusted her to maintain. That evening, as she sat in her hotel room reviewing properties online, her phone rang, unknown number, but local area code. Hello, is this Margaret Winters? A male voice, unfamiliar. Yes, who's calling? My name is Detective Michael Rodriguez, Fairfield County Sheriff's Department. I'm calling regarding your son-in-law, Nathan Turner. Margaret's heart seemed to stop. Has something happened? Are Emily and the children all right? They're fine, Mrs. Winters, the detective assured her quickly. I'm actually calling because Mr. Turner's name has come up in an ongoing investigation, and we understand you recently met with Samuel Hayes regarding some potentially relevant financial matters. Margaret's mind raced. Was this legitimate or some trick of Nathan's to uncover information about the trust? May I ask what kind of investigation? She inquired carefully. Real estate fraud, Detective Rodriguez replied. Specifically, pattern of insurance claims for water damage on properties where repairs were cosmetically concealed rather than properly addressed. The description matched exactly what Samuel had mentioned about Nathan's past. This couldn't be coincidence. I'd prefer to discuss this in person. Mrs. Winters, the detective continued. Would you be available to meet tomorrow morning at the station? Nothing formal, just an informational conversation. Margaret agreed to the meeting, her thoughts turbulent as she ended the call. If Nathan was under investigation for fraud, it explained his increasing desperation for the Brookfield deal and his aggressive pursuit of her financial resources. It also created a precarious situation for Emily and the children, who might face significant fallout if charges were filed. She needed more information before proceeding, and there was only one person who might have it. Despite the late hour, Margaret dialed Samuel Hayes' private number. Margaret, Samuel answered, sounding alert despite the time. Is everything all right? I'm not sure, she replied honestly, explaining the detective's call and her concerns about its legitimacy. Samuel was silent for a moment. Rodriguez is legitimate, he finally said. He contacted me as well, about 3 weeks ago, asking for documentation related to some of Nathan's previous investment solicitations. You didn't mention this earlier, Margaret observed, not accusatory but puzzled. The investigation was preliminary, and I wasn't at liberty to discuss it, Samuel explained. But if they're reaching out to you directly now, it's progressed significantly. What should I do if Nathan is charged with fraud? Emily and the children will be devastated financially and emotionally. Samuel sighed heavily. Meet with Rodriguez. Learn what you can. But Margaret, be careful. If Nathan suspects you're cooperating with law enforcement, he may restrict your access to Emily and the grandchildren entirely. The warning echoed Margaret's own concerns. Should I warn Emily? Not yet. Samuel advised. Not until you know more about the nature and extent of the investigation. False accusations could cause more harm than good. After ending the call, Margaret sat in the dimly lit hotel room, feeling the weight of competing responsibilities to Justice, to her daughter, to her grandchildren, and to herself. The path forward was increasingly complex, with potential consequences that extended far beyond holiday invitations or family disagreements. She thought of James's video message, his calm confidence in her judgment. You've always been the compass of our family, he'd said. Now that compass was being tested in ways neither of them could have anticipated, tomorrow's meeting with Detective Rodriguez would provide critical information. But Margaret already knew her fundamental position. She would protect Emily and the grandchildren at all costs, while refusing to enable Nathan's destructive behavior. Finding the balance between those principles would require all the wisdom and courage she'd accumulated in 63 years of living. As she finally prepared for bed, her phone chimed with a text message. Emily, sending a single line that made Margaret's resolve strengthen. Lucas asked to sleep with his light on tonight. Said he's scared of Dad's angry voice through the walls. Detective Rodriguez was younger than Margaret had expected, perhaps in his early 40s, with the alert eyes and careful speech of someone accustomed to evaluating every word for potential evidentiary value. His office at the Fairfield County Sheriff's Department was Spartan, but organized, case files stacked neatly on a desk that had seen better days. Thank you for coming in, Mrs. Winters, he said, gesturing to the chair across from him. I appreciate your willingness to assist our investigation. I haven't agreed to assist anything yet, Margaret replied evenly. I need to understand what exactly you're investigating and how it involves my family. Rodriguez nodded approvingly. Cautious. That's good. He opened a folder on his desk, revealing photographs of several properties. For the past 18 months, we've been tracking a pattern of insurance fraud involving residential properties throughout Fairfield County. Specifically, homes with water damage that was cosmetically concealed during renovations, then claimed on insurance after sale when the damage inevitably reappeared. Margaret studied the photographs' elegant homes with waterlogged basements, mold behind walls, sagging ceilings. And Nathan is involved in these properties. Mr. Turner was the listing agent on 4 of the 17 properties we're investigating. Rodriguez confirmed, and the selling agent on 3 others. The statistical improbability of his involvement in 7 cases suggests either remarkable bad luck or deliberate participation. That's circumstantial, Margaret observed. It was, Rodriguez agreed, until last week, when one of Mr. Turner's former associates agreed to cooperate with our investigation in exchange for immunity. He slid a photograph across the desk, Nathan shaking hands with a balding man in an expensive suit, both smiling for the camera at what appeared to be a charity event. Harold Whitaker, Rodriguez explained, former contractor who specialized in quick-flip renovations for distressed properties. According to Mr. Whitaker, your son-in-law was not only aware of the concealed damage, but actively participated in a scheme to maximize insurance payouts after sale. Margaret absorbed this information, thinking of the plumber arguing with Nathan about extensive pipe corrosion, of Emily's comments about mounting credit card debt, of Lucas's fear of his father's angry voice through the walls. Why are you telling me this? She asked finally. I have no involvement in Nathan's business affairs. Rodriguez leaned back, studying her. 2 reasons, Mrs. Winters. First, we have reason to believe Mr. Turner may be attempting to access additional financial resources to cover mounting legal expenses, resources that might include your assets. And the second reason? Your late husband, James Winters, reported concerns about potentially fraudulent investment solicitations from Nathan Turner approximately 3 years ago. The report was filed with the Financial Crimes Division, but never fully investigated due to insufficient evidence. Margaret stared at him in shock. James reported Nathan I had no idea. He withdrew the complaint shortly afterward, Rodriguez continued, but the initial report contained detailed documentation of what Mr. Winters described as systematic patterns of financial misrepresentation in Mr. Turner's business practices. The revelation was staggering. James had taken concrete steps to address his concerns about Nathan, then withdrawn them presumably to protect Emily from the fallout. He'd chosen family peace over pursuing justice, but had still created a record of his concerns. What happens next? Margaret asked, her mind racing with implications. We're building our case, Rodriguez replied. Whitaker's testimony is compelling but needs corroboration. We're interviewing other associates, reviewing insurance claims, examining financial records. If sufficient evidence is gathered, the district attorney will decide whether to file charges. And if charges are filed, what happens to my daughter and grandchildren? Rodriguez's expression softened slightly. That's outside my jurisdiction, Mrs. Winters. But in similar cases, families often face significant financial hardship, social stigma, and emotional trauma. Support systems become crucial. The implication was clear. Emily and the children would need Margaret as a stable presence when Nathan's world unraveled. But that could be months away. And in the meantime, Nathan remained in control of their daily lives. What should I do? Margaret asked, not entirely sure why she was seeking advice from this near stranger. Legally, I can't advise you, Rodriguez said carefully. But speaking as someone who's seen these situations before, secure your own financial resources immediately. Document any attempts by Mr. Turner to access your assets. And perhaps most importantly, maintain a visible, consistent presence in your grandchildren's lives. He closed the file on his desk, signaling the official part of their conversation was ending. Children need stability when their world is disrupted. Being that stability for them isn't interfering, it's providing essential support. As Margaret left the sheriff's department, her mind churned with competing priorities. The first and most urgent was finding permanent housing, a process she'd already begun, but now needed to accelerate. The second was establishing regular documented contact with the grandchildren that Nathan couldn't easily disrupt. The third, and perhaps most difficult, was deciding when and how to share this information with Emily. Her daughter deserved to know what might be coming, to prepare herself and the children, but timing was crucial too soon, and Emily might feel compelled to warn Nathan. Too late, and she'd have no time to process the impending crisis. Margaret's phone rang as she reached her car. Nathan's name flashed on the screen, sending a jolt of anxiety through her. Had he somehow discovered her meeting with Rodriguez? "Hello, Nathan," she answered, keeping her voice neutral. "Margaret?" His tone was all business. "I'm following up on our discussion yesterday. The sellers are expecting an answer on the Lakewood property by tomorrow. Have you made a decision?" The familiar pressure tactics felt almost comforting in their predictability after the morning's revelations. Nathan was still playing his usual games, unaware that the rules had fundamentally changed. "I have," Margaret replied. "After careful consideration, I've decided against co-signing for the property or contributing to the down payment." A tense silence followed. Then Nathan's voice returned, tight with controlled anger. "May I ask why this opportunity benefits the entire family, including you?" "My financial priorities are different at this stage of life," Margaret explained, keeping her tone reasonable. "I'm focusing on establishing my own secure housing near the grandchildren and maintaining reserves for future contingencies." "Future contingencies," Nathan repeated flatly. "More important than your grandchildren's immediate opportunities. Their opportunities don't depend on a prestigious address, Nathan. They depend on stable, loving parents who live authentically within their means." Another silence, longer this time. When Nathan spoke again, his voice had shifted to something more calculated. "I understand your position, Margaret. Though I must say, I'm surprised given what Emily shared about your recent financial windfall." Margaret's grip tightened on her phone. "What exactly did Emily share?" "Just that your meeting with Samuel Hayes revealed unexpected assets from James's estate. Assets substantial enough to enable a condominium purchase in one of Connecticut's most expensive counties." Emily hadn't shared this information she couldn't have because Margaret hadn't told her. Nathan was fishing, using a technique he probably employed successfully, with countless clients pretending to know more than he did to elicit confirmation. "My financial situation is private, Nathan," she replied evenly. "As yours should be with Emily, though apparently it hasn't been." A sharp intake of breath on the other end of the line told her the barb had landed. "This isn't about me, Margaret. It's about family resources being selfishly withheld while we struggle." "Is that what you told Emily, that I'm being selfish?" "I told her the truth that her father appears to have concealed assets that should rightfully support his daughter and grandchildren, and that you're choosing to maintain that concealment despite our needs." The manipulation was so transparent, yet Margaret knew it might be effective with Emily, who was already emotionally vulnerable and financially stressed. "Nathan," she said finally, "I'm declining to co-sign your loan. That decision is final. How you present it to Emily is your choice. But remember, misrepresentation has consequences." She ended the call before he could respond, her hands shaking slightly with adrenaline. The confrontation had been necessary, but would undoubtedly escalate tensions. Nathan might restrict her access to the children, might convince Emily that Margaret was withholding support out of spite rather than prudence. But given Detective Rodriguez's revelations, enabling Nathan's financial schemes would only delay the inevitable crash while potentially implicating her own resources in his fraudulent activities. The line had to be drawn, and Margaret had finally drawn it. Her next call was to the real estate agent handling a condominium she'd viewed earlier in the week, a modest two-bedroom unit in a converted Victorian house near the community center. The price was reasonable by Fairfield County standards, and the location offered both proximity to Emily's neighborhood and independence from the Turner household's direct influence. "I'd like to make an offer," Margaret told the agent, "at asking price, with a 30-day closing contingent on inspection." By the time she returned to her hotel room that afternoon, the offer had been accepted. The first crucial step toward establishing her permanent presence in Connecticut was underway. Now she needed to address the more complicated challenge, helping Emily recognize the danger of her situation without pushing her further under Nathan's influence. As Margaret began packing her belongings in preparation for the eventual move, her phone chimed with a text message. Emily again, her words sending a chill through Margaret's heart. "Nathan says you refuse to help with the Lakewood property because you don't really care about us. Is that true, Mom? Have we done something wrong?" The manipulation was working. Nathan was positioning Margaret's refusal as rejection of the family rather than rejection of his financial schemes. How to respond without escalating the situation or revealing information Emily wasn't ready to hear after careful consideration. Margaret typed, "I care about you and the children more than anything in this world. That will never change. My decision isn't about withholding help. It's about providing it in ways that create genuine security rather than temporary appearances. Can we talk tomorrow? Just the two of us." Emily's response came almost immediately. "Nathan's taking the children to his mother's for the weekend. Says we all need space from negative influences. I don't know what to do." "Mom," Margaret read between the lines. Nathan was isolating Emily from both her mother and her children, a classic control tactic that signaled escalating desperation. The weekend separation would give him time to reinforce his narrative without interference, potentially turning the children against Margaret while pressuring Emily to pursue other financial options. But it also created an opportunity for Margaret to speak with Emily alone, away from Nathan's immediate influence. She responded quickly, "If you'd like company this weekend, my door's always open. Or we could meet somewhere neutral, that cafe you like near the library." Three dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again as Emily composed her response. "Finally, I'll text you tomorrow. Need to think." It wasn't the commitment Margaret had hoped for, but it was something a small indication that Emily was at least considering conversation outside Nathan's approved channels. Now, all Margaret could do was wait, prepare, and hope that when the moment came, she would find the right words to help her daughter see the truth without feeling attacked or judged. As night fell over Fairfield County, Margaret stood at her hotel window, watching snow begin to fall over the harbor. The beauty of the scene contrasted sharply with the ugliness of the situation unfolding in her family. Nathan's fraud investigation, Emily's manipulation, the grandchildren caught in the crossfire of adult deceptions. James would have known what to do, she thought. Then corrected herself. James had faced this same situation years ago, had recognized Nathan's character flaws and reported his concerns, only to withdraw them for family peace. He'd created the trust to protect Margaret from precisely this scenario, but couldn't protect Emily or the grandchildren without creating the very conflict he sought to avoid. Now that responsibility fell to Margaret, not just to protect herself, but to create a safe harbor for Emily and the children when not if Nathan's carefully constructed facade finally collapsed. The detective had made it clear charges were likely coming, perhaps within months. The only question was whether Emily would be prepared when they did. Margaret turned from the window, her reflection in the glass showing a woman she sometimes barely recognized older, certainly, but also stronger, more determined than the accommodating wife and mother she'd been for most of her adult life. Widowhood had forced her to discover resources within herself she hadn't known existed. Nathan's manipulations had honed those resources into something formidable. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new confrontations, potentially new alliances if Emily chose to meet. The path ahead remained uncertain, but Margaret's purpose had never been clearer: to protect her family from a predator they couldn't yet recognize, and to create a foundation strong enough to support them when their world inevitably shattered. For the first time since James's death, Margaret felt fully aligned with her life's purpose. Nathan had dismissed her as an inconvenient old woman. Victoria had treated her as a financial resource to be exploited. Even Emily had sometimes seen her as an obligation rather than an ally. They had all underestimated her, her resilience, her discernment, her capacity for strategic action. That underestimation was about to become their most significant miscalculation. At 63, Margaret Winters was just discovering the full extent of her power, and she intended to use every ounce of it to save her family from the man who claimed to be its provider. They say time reveals the truth of who we are, not in our words, but in our choices when the world isn't watching. When the snow finally cleared that spring, I stood in the doorway of my new home, modest compared to Nathan's ambitions, but mine in every way that mattered. Through the window, I could see Emily and the children planting flowers in what would become our shared garden. Their laughter carried on the breeze, lighter somehow, unburdened. The trust James left behind wasn't just about money, it was about foresight, about seeing the storm before it arrives and building shelter not just for yourself, but for those who haven't yet recognized the gathering clouds. Nathan never understood that wealth isn't measured in square footage or prestigious addresses. It's calculated in moments of grace when someone chooses dignity over demands, boundaries over surrender. The investigation continues. The future remains unwritten. But in this moment, watching 3 generations plant seeds in freshly turned soil, I understand what James meant when he called me the compass of our family. Sometimes the true journey isn't about finding your place at someone else's table, but about building your own and keeping the door open for when they're ready to come home. What tables are you willing to leave to find your true worth?